Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're doing something a little different. We're not just skimming the news. We have a whole stack of source material, all focused on the big stories hitting on November 14th, 2025.
That's right. Our goal today is a really rapid but super thorough immersion. We have 9 major reports we're going to break down.
And we're going to treat each one like its own little unit of knowledge, right? To get past the headline and into the actual data.
Exactly. We're going to extract the facts, the connections, and what it all means long term. And the agenda is huge. We're covering everything from a massive state election in India to, geopolitics and economic policy.
It's an incredible range. We're going to go from the politics of the Bihar election right into a national security investigation in Delhi.
And then we'll pivot to a huge economic plan, public health crises, international diplomacy.
And we're even going to end with a look at a high-stakes cricket series. So let's just jump right in and start where the political drama is unfolding, the Bihar Assembly Election.
Okay, so the Bihar election. This was, without a doubt, one of the biggest political battles of the year.
And the main contest was between the ruling coalition, the NDA.
Right, the BJP-led National Democratic Alliance. And they were up against the opposition Mahagathbandhan.
Which is spearheaded by Tejashwi Yadav's RJD.
Exactly. And the sources really highlight the intensity here. There were 2 phases of voting, November 6th and 11th, for all 243 seats in the assembly.
What's so fascinating, especially looking at the reporting from the 14th, is just how clear the exit polls were, even as the votes were just starting to be counted.
They weren't predicting a close race at all.
No, not a cliffhanger. They were basically calling it a comfortable victory, which must have been, a huge blow to the opposition's hopes before the official numbers even came in.
The consensus was pretty substantial. The exit polls, on average, were projecting the NDA would secure about 146 seats.
Out of 243 total.
Right. And to put that into perspective for you, that is well over the majority mark needed to form a government.
Right.
It signals a really strong mandate.
So what did that projection mean for the other side, for the Mahagathbandhan?
It suggested a pretty big setback for them. They were projected to win only around 92 seats.
And they had 110 before, right?
They did. So that's a notable decline in their strength. It basically indicates that the NDA coalition managed to fight off whatever anti-incumbency feeling was out there.
Let's dig into the margins, though, because the sources show this really interesting split in how confident the different pollsters were. It wasn't just one single prediction.
That's where it gets nuanced, yeah. You had some of the top-tier agencies like today's Chanakya and CNX, and they were predicting an absolute landslide.
Oh, wow.
Pretty much. They were forecasting over 150 seats for the NDA, some even pushing towards 170. I mean, that's a picture of a decisive wave where the opposition gets crushed.
But then you have this counter-narrative from another agency, Access My India, and they had a totally different take.
A completely different perspective. They suggested the NDA might just squeak by, maybe winning by as few as 3 seats.
That's a massive difference. I mean, that's the difference between a landslide and a nail-biter. What explains that kind of variation?
Well, it really shows you how hard it is to poll in these huge demographically complex states like Bihar. A narrow prediction like that suggests that, okay, the overall trend is with the incumbents.
Sure.
But a small shift, maybe a regional surge for the opposition, or just higher turnout in a few key areas, could completely change the final tally. A 3-seat margin suggests that win might be a bit fragile.
We should also mention the debut of a big new player, Prashant Kishore's Jan Swaraj Party. The forecast for them was, well, not great.
Minimal impact, really. Despite all the hype around Kishore himself, they were only forecast to win a single seat.
So it signals that, for now at least, he couldn't translate that organizational energy into actual votes against the 2 big political machines.
Right. He'll probably have to rethink his strategy going forward.
Okay, now here's where it gets really, really interesting. There's this critical little nugget of insight in the sources from the People's Pulse survey.
Ah, the leadership divergence. This is the political science headache.
Exactly. So People's Pulse also predicted an NDA win, somewhere between 133 and 159 seats, so they're in line with the general trend. But at the same time, their survey found that Tejashwi Yadav, the opposition leader, was actually the more popular choice for chief minister among the people.
So voters are basically saying, I like the opposition leader more, but I'm going to vote for the incumbent coalition.
What does that tell you about the voter in Bihar?
It tells you that these state elections are incredibly complex. They're not just a simple referendum on one person's charisma. Voters might like Yadav's vision or his youth appeal, but in the end, they might be voting for what they see as stability, or the governance record, or just the powerful caste arithmetic of the larger NDA alliance. It's a conscious choice to vote for the party or the system over the individual leader they might personally prefer.
So let's break down those demographic trends, because caste and community loyalty is just the bedrock of politics there.
The sources are pretty specific. They confirm a lot of the expected patterns. For instance, women voters largely backed Nitish Kumar and the NDA.
How much support are we talking?
Axis Mime. India reported 45% support for the NBA from women. And that's a critical voting bloc that has really anchored the NDA's victories in the past.
And what about the RJD's traditional voter base? Did they hold firm?
They did, but it just wasn't enough to carry them over the finish line. The Yadavs, who are the RJD's core base, overwhelmingly voted for the RJD.
And the Muslim community as well.
Yes, nearly 80% of Muslim voters favored the Mahagathbandhan. So you had these incredibly loyal blocs for the opposition, but it seems the NDA's ability to consolidate votes from other dominant caste groups, and especially that women's vote, was just enough to overcome it.
Another big point of discussion was the turnout. The source says it was notably high, almost 67%. And historically, that's supposed to be bad news for the party in power.
Right, and that's exactly what fueled the opposition's optimism. The sources point out that in Bihar's history, big spikes in voter turnout have often unseated incumbents. I think 3 past governments fell after similar surges.
And Tejashwi Yadav was banking on that, wasn't he?
He seized on it. He interpreted that high turnout as a clear vote for change.
But the NDA's response was, well, it was something else. They showed a level of confidence that just seemed to ignore that historical trend completely.
This is the perfect punchline to the whole political story. The NDA's confidence was so high, they placed a massive order for celebratory sweets.
How massive are we talking?
We're talking 500 kilograms of lattice. And 5 lakh, that's 500,000 rasgullas and gulab jamuns.
You don't order 500,000 desserts if you think it's going to be a close race.
Exactly. That's not just expecting a win. That's signaling absolute certainty. It suggests their own internal numbers told them that this high turnout was actually their voters coming out in force.
It's an amazing study in political mechanics. You've got the rivalries, the complex mix of caste, gender, leadership, and an incumbent party so sure of itself it's willing to, literally bet the dessert card on it.
Okay, let's shift gears completely. We're moving from the political calculus in Bihar to a very serious national security situation.
Yeah.
The investigation into the Red Fort blast in Delhi.
Right. And the source material here is focused on 2 key individuals. First, there's Umar Nabi, who's identified as a doctor at Al Falah University.
And his associate, Muzamil Ahmad Ghanai.
Yes. But what's immediately complicated about this case is the finding that these 2 weren't really operating as a tight-knit unit when the blast happened.
What do you mean?
Their relationship had soured, apparently over a money dispute. And this led them to start operating separately. That's a crucial detail.
Why is it so crucial?
Because it shifts the motive. It's not just about ideology or a terror mission anymore. It injects this layer of personal financial conflict into the whole investigation. So if there's a money issue, does that change how investigators would normally look at a terror cell?
It makes it much more complicated. Usually you're looking for a clear command structure, ideological purity. But here, this internal conflict, this squabble over money, it suggests a fragmented operation.
Which could make them weaker.
Weaker, yes, but also potentially more unpredictable. And harder to trace if the suspects suddenly cut ties and decide to go it alone.
Let's walk through the timeline because it's vital to understanding Umar Nabi's last movements. His associate, Muzamil, was arrested on October 30th.
And right after that arrest, Umar immediately leaves his university campus in Faridabad.
He doesn't just leave, though. He travels to a place called Nu, and he's in the very same Hyundai i20 car that later explodes outside the Red Fort.
The investigators have concrete proof of this. There's CCTV footage that places the car at the Firozapur Hiraka toll plaza in Nu at 1:36 in the morning on a Monday.
And that's just hours before it returned to Delhi for the blast.
Exactly. So right now, the investigation has to be laser-focused on that critical window of time he spent in Nu. Where did he stay? Who did he meet? That's where they'll find the local network.
And the probe also uncovered this Kashmir connection that happened even before his associate was arrested.
That's right. Umar had traveled to Kashmir earlier, from October 18th to the 24th.
And what are they trying to figure out about that trip?
A special team is trying to clarify his motive, his contacts, and exactly what he was doing for those 6 days in Kashmir. And here's another major red flag. He left 2 of his mobile phones behind before he came back to Delhi.
In any modern investigation, abandoning your digital devices like that,
Yeah.
that's a huge sign.
It's a very strong indicator that you're trying to cut off your digital trail. It suggests he was preparing for something from which he didn't expect to return.
And given the nature of the blast, the final confirmation of who was involved really comes down to forensic science, specifically DNA.
That is the absolute pillar of this phase of the investigation. They needed to confirm the identity of the people who died in the blast, who might have been the bombers themselves.
So they collected DNA samples from Umar's mother in Pulwama.
Yes, and they matched those samples against samples taken from the unidentified bodies recovered from the blast site, which were at Luk Hospital.
So the DNA match strongly implies that Umar Nabi himself died in the explosion.
It strongly suggests it.
Does that confirmation help or hinder the broader investigation?
Well, it does both. On the one hand, identifying a casualty is a huge breakthrough. But it also means law enforcement has lost their primary living suspect. They can't question him about the logistics, the funding, the command structure.
Which makes the interrogation of Muzamil, the associate who was arrested, that much more important.
Exponentially more critical. The sources say forensic experts are still examining the details, but that preliminary DNA match is a major step forward.
And to map out the full scope of this operation, the Delhi Police Special Cell is taking a multi-pronged approach. What does that involve?
They've broken it down. One team is systematically profiling every single student at Alpha Law University.
The whole university.
The whole university. They're looking for signs of radicalization, trying to trace any other network activity within that academic environment. It's a massive task.
And then there's the tech side, dealing with the phones Umar left behind.
Precisely. Another team is dedicated just to analyzing the IPDR data from those phones.
And IPDR, that's more than just call logs, right?
Much more. It's Internet Protocol detail records. It maps data usage, location history, communication patterns, contacts. They're using that to confirm who he was talking to and where he was, especially in New. The whole case really just shows how much law enforcement has to rely on advanced forensic and digital tools these days.
Okay, let's pivot again, this time from a security investigation to a really proactive, future-focused economic strategy. We're talking about Karnataka's new information technology policy for 2025 to 2030.
Based on the sources, this is a seriously aggressive plan. It's designed to make sure the state stays a global leader in IT.
The word aggressive seems right. The scale of what they're trying to do is enormous. They're aiming to generate over 90 lakh, that's 9 million direct and indirect jobs by 2030.
9 million jobs. I mean, to put that in perspective for you, that's roughly the population of a country like Austria or Switzerland. It just shows you the sheer scale of ambition here.
And it's not just about jobs. They have a massive goal for how much the IT sector contributes to the state's whole economy.
Yeah, they want to increase the IT sector's contribution to the gross state value added, the GSVA, from where it is now at 26% all the way up to 36%.
A 36% contribution from one sector is staggering. It basically reshapes the entire state economy.
It does. It signals a much deeper reliance on high-tech services and innovation. And their export goals are just as eye-watering. They want to boost software exports from about 4 lakh crore rupees to 11.5 lakh crore.
And that's about maintaining their global edge, right?
Exactly. Hitting that 11.5 lakh crore target would mean Karnataka keeps its massive 44% share of all of India's software exports. This is about actively shaping the future, not just riding the wave.
A huge part of this strategy is something called the IT Talent Return Program. This seems really strategic. It's designed to bring Indian professionals who are currently working abroad back home to Karnataka.
It's a genius move, and it's perfectly timed. Now, officials are saying this was planned proactively to tap into the expertise of the diaspora.
But the timing is convenient.
The context of global layoffs in the tech sector, especially in the US and Europe, plus all the uncertainty around work visas, makes this program incredibly attractive right now. The goal is to bring back leaders, R&D specialists, people with that global experience.
So how does it actually work? How do they connect these professionals with jobs back home?
The whole thing is built around a dedicated digital portal. It's a central hub that connects the returning professionals directly with companies in Karnataka.
And they're leveraging the big multinational hubs there.
Crucially, yes. They're leveraging the Global Capability Centers, the GCCs, which are basically the backbones for these huge multinational companies in India. And they need exactly the kind of high-level, globally experienced talent this program is trying to repatriate. It's an attempt to turn brain drain into brain circulation.
The policy also tackles what a lot of people see as Bengaluru's biggest problem, the strain on infrastructure from all that concentrated growth, they have a whole beyond Bengaluru strategy.
This is critical for sustainable growth. They can't just keep piling everything into Bengaluru. So the plan is to create new innovation hubs outside the capital.
And the sources list the target cities.
They do. Mysuru, Mangaluru, Hubli Ahawad, Belagavi, Tumakuru, Kalaburagi, and Shivamogga.
And they're using some serious financial incentives to get companies to move there, right?
The incentives are substantial. For any firm that hires 100 or more employees outside of Bengaluru, the government is offering financial help from 35 lakh rupees all the way up to 7 crore rupees.
7 crore. That's a huge push to make relocating economically irresistible.
It is. And they're also helping with the employees. Companies that relocate talent can get up to 50,000 rupees per employee as a one-time reimbursement.
And what about building up the local talent pools in these new cities?
To make sure these new hubs are viable long-term, the policy also includes training subsidies of up to 10 lakh rupees for each academic group. This is to make sure the local talent pipeline is ready for the tech companies that are coming in.
So what's the total cost for this whole vision, and what's the big tech priority behind it all?
The total planned state expenditure is budgeted at about 967 crore rupees. And Minister Priyank Karji was clear that Karnataka's leadership depends on pioneering artificial intelligence. So this whole policy is about more than just making Bengaluru bigger. It's about pushing innovation and systematically spreading those high-value jobs across the entire state.
Okay, let's shift now to two parallel crises that are really threatening India's public health. We'll start with the Supreme Court's extraordinary intervention on the toxic air quality in Delhi. The language the court used was, well, it was defining.
The severity of that warning, it just can't be overstated. The Supreme Court of India called the capital's air pollution crisis capable of causing permanent damage to people's health.
Permanent damage.
Yes. And that elevates this whole discussion. It's not just a temporary problem or a seasonal sickness anymore. The judiciary is framing this as a threat of irreparable, lifelong harm.
And their response was immediate and very symbolic, especially for the legal community itself.
It was. The bench immediately directed lawyers to use virtual hearings instead of coming to court physically because of the severe risks. Justice Narasimha was very clear. He said masks just aren't enough protection right now.
And this all happened as the air quality index, the AQI, was crossing 400 in several places, which is firmly in the severe category.
Right, and that severe category triggers Phase 3 of the Graded Response Action Plan, or GRAP.
And what does GRP3 actually do? What are the restrictions?
It triggers these sweeping immediate curbs on pollution sources. So a ban on most non-essential construction and demolition work, that has a huge impact on infrastructure projects.
And a big focus on traffic, I assume?
Absolutely. Strict restrictions on older vehicles, specifically banning BS3 petrol and BS4 diesel vehicles. They're trying to get the most polluting cars and trucks off the road immediately.
And for kids?
Mandatory online classes for all students up to Class 5 to keep the most vulnerable children indoors.
The court also went after the root cause of this every single year, which is the stubble burning in neighboring states.
Yes, they directed the governments of Punjab and Haryana to submit reports on what they're doing to curb stubble burning. But what's also important is that the court's amicus curiae, that's their legal advisor, flags some serious concerns about the official data.
What kind of concerns?
Discrepancies in the official AQI data, which suggests the real situation might be even worse than the official numbers are showing. It raises questions about data trust.
So that legal framing of permanent damage really sets a new precedent. Now let's move from the air we breathe to another alarming health crisis, the massive surge in diabetes in India.
This is a deeply concerning shift. We're now seeing this troubling rise of type 2 diabetes in much younger adults, people in their 20s and 30s.
And this used to be a disease associated with older people.
Traditionally, yes. But its emergence in the working age population is being driven by, rapid urbanization, sedentary lifestyles, changes in diet, rising obesity, all of that.
And the scale of this, according to the big ICMR India study from 2023, it's just immense.
The numbers are, frankly, staggering. It is a health emergency. That study found back in 2021, India had 101 million diagnosed diabetics.
101 million.
And 136 million pre-diabetics. So that's a prevalence rate of over 11% for diabetes and over 15% for pre-diabetes. And on top of that, you have 315 million people with hypertension.
And when this hits younger people, it means decades of lost productivity and health because of all the complications that come with it.
Exactly. Heart disease, kidney failure, stroke, all of it.
Yeah,
And the latest data from 2025 shows the risk for people under 40 is getting worse.
What did that data show?
from Mahajan Imaging and Labs. It showed that nearly 38% of fasting glucose tests and 35% of post-meal glucose tests among adults under 40 showed abnormalities. These numbers just confirm how metabolically vulnerable the young workforce has become.
So given this, what's the recommendation? When should people start getting screened?
Experts are now saying you need to start annual screenings proactively from the age of 25. The whole approach is shifting from waiting for symptoms to actively looking for these metabolic changes before the disease fully develops.
And the sources mentioned that the diagnostic tech is also evolving to help with this early detection. Can you break down some of those advanced tools? They sound pretty technical.
This is where it gets really interesting. It's a convergence of pathology, genomics, and data analytics. We're moving beyond simple blood sugar tests.
So what are we looking at?
So there's something called ATMA-IR, which estimates insulin resistance. It tells you how well your body's cells are responding to insulin, which is the precursor to type 2. Then there's the C-peptide test, which shows how much insulin your own body is producing. There's continuous glucose monitoring, which tracks your blood sugar in real time, and even genetic tests for rarer forms of diabetes.
It sounds like a complete paradigm shift from just treating the disease to actually predicting and preventing it.
That's exactly what it is. The ability to map out inflammation and metabolic stress long before someone is formally diabetic. That is the future of public health strategy in India. The consensus is clear. The working age population is the key demographic for reversing this trend.
All right, now for a quick fire round on 3 very different but all high-impact headlines. We're going from geopolitics to workplace reform. Let's start with this controversy about RSS lobbying in the United States.
So this all came out because of official lobbying disclosure documents filed with the U.S. Senate. These are mandatory for anyone trying to influence U.S. policy.
And what did they show?
They revealed that a U.S. firm, State Street Strategies, hired a very big Washington, D.C. lobbying firm called Squire Patton Boggs, or SPB, and this was back in March 2025.
And they were hired to lobby on behalf of the RSS, the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh.
Correct. The stated goal was pretty benign, to promote U.S.-India bilateral relations. But the big problem here, the conflict of interest, is about SPB's other clients.
Who else do they represent?
Well, SPB is also a prominent firm that represents the government of Pakistan.
Wow. Okay, so that raises some immediate and pretty profound questions about competing interests.
It absolutely does. It's a huge political optics problem in Washington. But then, the response from the RSS in India was a swift and categorical denial.
So they just said it's not true.
Sunil Ambekar, who's the head of their national media department, released a very strong statement. He said the organization works in Bharat and has not engaged any lobbying firm in the U.S.
So you have these legally binding documents in the U.S. saying one thing, and the organization in India saying the complete opposite.
Right. And that tension really shows you the domestic political sensitivity of these kinds of international engagements for an organization like the RSS, which really cultivates an image of being a grassroots indigenous movement.
Okay, let's move to our next geopolitical story. This is a big one. India's unilateral stance on the Indus Waters Treaty with Pakistan.
This is a major policy shift. We're talking about a 65-year-old water-sharing agreement. India has now unilaterally declared that treaty to be in abeyance.
In abeyance. What does that mean in practical terms?
It means they're not participating. They've stated they won't recognize or accept any decisions made by the Permanent Court of Arbitration in Vienna. Any awards or proceedings from that tribunal are considered null and void by New Delhi.
This isn't just a disagreement, it's a total rejection of the treaty's dispute mechanism. What triggered this?
There were 2 major security-related triggers. The primary one was the terror attack in Pahalgam on April 22, 2025, which killed 26 people. India blamed Pakistan and suspended cooperation.
And that resolve was hardened after the Red Fort blast.
Exactly. The investigation linked that blast to a Pakistan-based terror module, and India's position became that cooperation on water sharing was just untenable while they were facing what they see as state-sponsored terror.
But despite India pulling out, Pakistan is still pursuing the legal case.
That's right. Pakistan is moving forward with the proceedings in Vienna. The case is about India's construction of the Kishonganga and Radal hydroelectric projects, which Pakistan says violate the treaty.
And there's a legal conflict here about the court's authority, isn't there?
There is. India has been saying for years that parts of the treaty are outdated and need to be renegotiated. They see the court's decision to assert jurisdiction after India suspended cooperation as a serious breach. They feel the court is overstepping its mandate and ignoring the changed security situation.
So what are India's conditions for coming back to the table?
India insists the treaty will remain suspended until Pakistan permanently renounces all support for terrorism. They are directly linking national security to this technical agreement on water.
Okay, our last headline in this section is a really significant and progressive move in domestic policy coming out of Karnataka.
Yes, this is a landmark social policy. The Karnataka government is granting 1 day of paid menstrual leave per month to all working women between the ages of 18 and 52.
And who does this policy cover? Is it just for formal, permanent employees?
No, and that's one of the key progressive parts. It covers a very broad range of workers, permanent, contractual, and even outsourced employees. They're applying it across different labor laws to ensure it includes as many women as possible.
And let's talk about the mechanism of the leave, because there's a crucial detail that protects privacy.
This is maybe the most important part of the policy. The total is 12 paid days a year, 1 per month, and you can't carry it forward. But the real breakthrough is that women do not have to submit a medical certificate to take the leave.
Which removes a huge barrier.
A huge barrier. It avoids potential embarrassment or scrutiny and destigmatizes a normal biological reality. It respects the employee's autonomy.
Now, advocates see this as a huge step forward, but the source does mention the ongoing debate around these kinds of policies.
Absolutely. It's a global debate. Critics often worry that this kind of gender-specific leave could reinforce stereotypes about women's reliability or even discourage employers from hiring women.
And how did the Karnataka government address that criticism?
They framed the whole initiative not as a concession based on weakness, but as a health and performance measure. They argued that supporting physiological well-being actually leads to better efficiency and productivity in the long run. It showed there was really strong political will to get this done.
And finally, let's wrap up our deep dive in the world of sports with the big test series starting between India and South Africa. And if you look at the history, the stats are pretty lopsided.
The history is brutal for South Africa. They are the reigning World Test champions, but they're facing what is probably the toughest challenge in world cricket, a test series in India.
Their record is just dismal there.
It is. They've lost 6 of their last 7 tests in India, often by huge margins. The 7th was a draw only because of rain. It's a massive psychological hurdle for them.
But they're arriving with an experienced team hoping to change that. Who are their key players?
They're relying on experience. Their spin attack is led by Keshav Maharaj, who is central to their plans in India. And their pace attack is anchored by the great Kagiso Rabada. They've shown some resilience recently, but winning in India is just a different level of difficulty.
Meanwhile, India isn't exactly in a period of complete dominance. They're third in the World Test Championship standings.
Right, India is in a bit of a transition phase. They're still incredibly tough to beat at home, but they did have that shock loss to New Zealand last year, which showed some vulnerability. For them, this series is all about consolidating their home advantage and getting those crucial WTC points.
The spotlight is going to be intense on a few key people, especially the captain.
Yeah, the scrutiny on Shubman Gill is incredibly high. He's the young, all-format captain, and his ability to switch from the high pace of T20 cricket to the patience of Test cricket after a relentless schedule is going to be key.
And on the South African side, all eyes on Maharaj.
His workload is expected to be immense, especially if the pitches are what we expect at Eden Gardens.
Let's talk about lineups. For India, there's some big news.
The big news is the return of their premier wicketkeeper, Rishabh Pant, after his long injury recovery. His dynamic presence in the middle order is a huge boost. They've also kept Dhruv Jurel in the side as a specialist batter, which shows a lot of confidence in him.
And what about South Africa's team? Any strategic changes?
They've made some key choices. Captain Temba Bavuma is back. And crucially, they've picked Marco Jansen over Wayne Mulder. Jansen gives them genuine pace, height, and some useful lower-order batting.
The conditions at Eden Gardens, and especially the toss, could be decisive.
Eden Gardens is usually a good batting track to start, but the toss is often huge in India. You win the toss, bat first, put a big score on the board, and apply pressure.
And there's a little trivia nugget here that adds some psychological spice.
There is. Captain Gill has only won 1 of 7 tosses in tests.
Yeah.
And South Africa, they have lost the toss in all 7 of their last 7 tests in India. That is an incredible streak of bad luck.
Wow. That could be a factor before a single ball is even bowled. Any big milestones we should be watching for in this series?
Yes, 2 big ones. For South Africa, their wicketkeeper Kyle Verreynne is close to 100 dismissals. But the really big one is for India's Ravindra Jadeja. He's just 10 runs away from achieving the very rare 300 wickets and 4,000 runs double in Test cricket.
Which would put him among the all-time great all-rounders.
Absolutely. So for South Africa, they have to defy history and the stats, while India will be focused on just continuing their dominance at home.
What a dive. We have covered an incredible amount of ground. We went from the electoral mechanics of Bihar to the forensic trail of a national security investigation.
We covered Karnataka's plan for 9 million jobs and AI leadership, and then the stark reality of India's dual health crises, from toxic air to the surge in youth diabetes.
And we synthesized these complex geopolitical shifts, India's stance on the Indus Waters Treaty, the whole RSS lobbying story in the U.S.
We finished with a look at a major step forward in social policy with Karnataka's menstrual leave and a high-stakes cricket series. And the theme through all of this is just the sheer speed and complexity of events.
And that complexity brings us back to one of the most sobering facts we talk about today. We covered the Supreme Court's warning about the air quality in Delhi, describing it as capable of causing permanent damage.
Right. And this isn't just a regulatory issue anymore. That's a legal framing of irreparable harm. And that raises a pretty profound question for you to think about. Given that the highest court has now framed environmental issues in these most severe legal terms as a threat of permanent damage, how quickly will that force citizens, corporations, and governments to fundamentally shift their priorities, to move beyond these small incremental measures and toward mandated structural change to protect the environment?
A question that connects legal liability, public health, and maybe the future survival of a major city. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the source material.
It's always a pleasure to unpack the facts and find the insights for you. We'll see you next time.